orange sky. So there was an alien that was cruising along, and he came over Alaska, and he looked down and he said, "Man, that's a beautiful state down there. I just love it. All those mountains and rivers and streams." And I thought, there must be a lot of really smart people that live in such a gorgeous place. So he lands at Skinny Dick's, and he walks past a moose in the parking lot who's lifting a truck. And he walks into the bar, and up to the bartender, and he says, "I'm looking for signs of intelligent life." The bartender says, "Well, best I can do is some guy ice fishing at 40 below." So why is Alaska unique for UAP research? Like, why is it important here? We don't seem to get a lot of cases. Other places have more. Well, we are in a strategic position between continents. Alaska sits between North America, Asia, and the Arctic, which makes it one of the closest points between the United States and Asia, which is a really big deal. This makes us important for aviation, military, radar, and satellites. We are also a major aviation crossroads. Aircraft traveling between North America and Asia frequently pass near or over Alaska. This includes other cargo flights that you can think of, passenger aircraft, military flights, and those going up to the polar regions. Ted Stevens International Airport is one of the largest cargo hubs in the world because of this. Flights take off from Ted Stevens an average of a minute to a minute and a half, 24/7. We are also strategic because of our polar satellite orbits. So many satellites travel in polar orbits, which means they pass near the north or south poles on every revolution. Because we're up here at high latitude, which also causes us to not get any vitamin D from the sun, but who's to know? More satellites are visible. Satellite passes will occur frequently, and up here in Alaska, we can see satellites they can't see down in Lower 48, which is very cool. So this is one reason people in Alaska often report those slow, silent lights going across the sky. So one way that you can tell if something is a low Earth or medium Earth satellite is when you're watching it move and it's going along, and then it gets halfway across the sky, it starts to blink out a little bit, and then it vanishes. That's a satellite because it has just moved into Earth's shadow. So the geostationary satellites are a little more tricky because they appear to not be moving, because they are going with the revolution of the Earth, which we don't often detect. So it can look like a UFO or a UAP in certain weather conditions. And we also have a large area of remote wilderness up here in Alaska, which is one of the things that we ought to know and love about this state. So Alaska, while we're the biggest state, we have the lowest population. We have about 738,000 people for the entire state. And the vast majority of them live up in the Anchorage area or down here in Fairbanks. So these large regions of remote wilderness have little infrastructure. We have extremely dark skies. Well, Anchorage, not as much, but out here you kind of do. And minimal light pollution. So this makes Alaska a premier spot to do sky watches. And let's not forget about the military. We have a lot of monitoring and defense systems up here. So Alaska plays a key role in North American defense. We have our major facilities like Joint Base North Richardson up in the Anchorage area, Ice Air Force Base down here, and Clear Space Force Station out in Clear, which is about 75 miles southwest of here, and then also Fort Wainwright and Fort Greely, the smaller installations. So these installations, all together and in different ways, monitor airspace, missile launches, and radar activity in the Arctic. So as a result, some of the UAP activity that we sometimes observe is the military doing maneuvers. And we are also on the border of 3 oceans, the Arctic, Pacific, and the Bering Sea. So for us, this means we have large areas of airspace that are far from populated areas, which is sometimes why unusual area observations are recorded in remote areas, which begs the question, are those UAPs that we notice out there because that's where they have their bases and where they live, so to speak, and we're just noticing them because we're out there, or have they come to see what we're doing, especially in regards to military? So why does all this matter? Well, because of these factors, Alaska provides that wide sky visibility. We have the frequent satellite passes, the heavy aviation traffic, and those extremely dark skies. So all these conditions make Alaska an excellent place to look at phenomena. I was asked the other day, why do you say UAP instead of UFO? Well, they mean the same thing. So UFOs is unidentified flying objects, and then UAP used to mean unidentified aerial phenomena. But the government shifted in 2022, and it is now unidentified anomalous phenomena. But here at MUFON, we often use them interchangeably, and I do as well. So when you hear UFO or UAP, I mean the same thing. Well, Alaska has several hotspot regions that we're going to take a look at next. But over the years, there are certain areas of Alaska that have the most reports. Some of the most commonly reported regions include the Anchorage hillside, up where I live, and Hatcher Pass, and then Fairbanks and the interior. And there's also quite a bit of activity, including cryptozoology activity and paranormal down here. There's also quite a bit reported from remote coastal conditions across Alaska. So what do these locations have in common? With the exception of Anchorage, dark skies, wide visibility, and low population density. So I have created a UAP hotspot map for those of us who like a map and like to see things laid out. So let's take a look at some recordings across the area. So first, the Anchorage Villa and the hillside. So Anchorage is the largest collecting of sightings in the state. Reasons include there is a large population base. So that goes back to why don't we have as many reports as we really should based on how much stuff is going on here. Well, Anchorage has a lot of eyes on the sky. So that is one reason there are more sighting reports. And also up on the hillside, they have wide sky visibility. They can see down over the mountains and then across Cook Inlet. We also have a lot of heavy aviation traffic, both from Ted Stevens and the many, many small airports in the area. We're also really close to Joint Base Edward Richardson. So common reported lights are slow moving or they hover over the inlet, and there's also been reports of objects pacing along the aircraft corridors. One lady who's an experiencer actually reported a sighting where she thought there was an object that was communicating with her, like she felt like it wanted something from her. And she unfortunately was unable to get video or photo footage, so we couldn't analyze that. But she described it as going like this and then up, kind of in a horizontal square, and then a triangle. So it was moving in a way that was not synonymous with aircraft. So we did the complete investigation, and there were no aircraft in that area, and it did not match any known movement during the motion analysis. Heading north a bit towards Hatcher Pass in the Tuskegee Mountains, sightings occur here because there is high elevation. There's a lot of observation points, those dark skies that we talked about, and a wide horizon views. So over here, witnesses often report silent moving objects, reflective daytime objects, and just some unusual movement above the mountain ridges. We had a case that was a historic case that took place about 5 years ago in Hatcher Pass. And they did get video footage from this one, and it did not match any motion vectors, and there were no aircraft in the region. But they reported this as kind of like meandering along, like it was sauntering, like it was just out enjoying a beautiful day. aliens know for joining us. And heading down to Kodiak Island, an interesting thing about this is that they have a large military presence down there with a lot of radar, and there's also a lot of heavy fishing vessel traffic. That combined with the wide ocean views makes for some interesting sighting reports. Sightings reported here often about lights over the water, objects ascending towards the water, and bright lights hovering offshore. Some people have reported seeing objects go into the water, and then others have reported them coming up, which begs the question, is there an underwater base out there? One fisherman I spoke to said he believes so because he's seen it more than once. And then, coming up here to the wonderful Fairbanks region, one reason you guys get lost sightings here is those dark skies that can be experienced outside the city and strong war activity. Aviation traffic, both from the airport and Isleston. So the sightings appear often of unusual lights during the aurora activity and objects moving across the northern sky. For some of those lights reported during the aurora could simply be the aurora doing its natural phenomena. And if you're not used to it, when it moves and jumps around and creates shapes, it can look a bit anomalous. And then those objects moving across the sky, some of them are probably anomalous, some of them are probably satellites. Heading back out to remote coastal Alaska, thinking illusions and down in the Bering Sea. Our reports from here often come from fishermen and women, ship crews, remote radar stations, and bush pilots. So common descriptions, as in Kodiak, are lights over the ocean, objects entering or leaving the water, and fast-moving lights. So, about 85% of the objects and the cases that we receive can be identified. We figure out if they're an airplane, they're a bird, or they're a satellite, or something as man-made or nature-made, which leaves about 15% that isn't, and that's the 15% that we are interested in. So let's look at some reports over the years for UAP activity. During the Cold War, personnel stationed along the oceans occasionally reported unusual lights over the ocean. They described fast-moving lights, objects changing direction abruptly, and activity over those remote areas. And many of those reports were never investigated publicly, which is kind of understandable as the Cold War, the government had other things on its mind. And then this particularly interesting flag up in Bristol Bay in the mid-2000s was commercial fishermen near Bristol Bay reported a lot of lights moving in formation. They had sudden separation and regrouping, and they were also silent as they moved over the water. And witnesses said the lights did not resemble aircraft. And so when a long-time Alaskan or a always lived in Alaskan or someone with a military background tells me these lights, these objects do not resemble aircraft, that's huge to me because Alaskans, military, well, they know what airplanes are like. And then in 2018, there was a report from a pilot who was flying along the coast of Alaska, and he reported a bright object appeared out of nowhere and started pacing his aircraft. So it scared him, and he didn't know what to think. And then it did a sudden climb up and disappeared, and he piloted in, and there was no radar confirmation of anything nearby. And then up in McGrath, Alaska, where I'm from, reports from the McGrath region in interior Alaska have always included observations of unusual aerial lights. You talk to anybody out there and they've seen something. So some of these descriptions have included bright lights moving across the sky. Are they satellites? Probably some of them, especially now, since there's about 5,000 starlings up there. Objects that change direction unexpectedly, I have seen those myself, and solid movement going over the vast security. So this next incident is actually the first time I ever saw a UFO. So my family had a homestead farm about 10 miles outside of Alaska, McGrath, Alaska, and that's where I was raised. We had no close neighbors, and we were 10 miles from the town, and the only way you could get to my family's farmstead was up the river. So it was pretty remote. I remember one day, I was about 11 or 12 years old. I was outside with a male family member and we were doing some chores. And the next thing I know, there was something overhead. To the best of my young person remembrance, it was about 20, 30 feet up, and it was a triangular-shaped craft. And it was about 30 feet in length, which is a bit smaller than triangular-shaped crafts that are often reported, because those are usually about 300 feet. I had no fear. It was mostly and incredibility. So my family member is looking up at it, and he's looking at this way, and he said, "Wow, that's a UFO, Shay." And so I'm watching the UFO, and I'm watching him. So I'm simultaneously watching someone have an experience and having my own experience. I cannot tell you how long it lasted. The next thing I remember, we are finishing up the chore, and I'm walking through the door into the house. My mother's in the kitchen, and I said, "Mom, we saw a UFO." And she looks at my family member as he's coming in behind me and she says, "You guys saw a UFO?" And he said, "We didn't see anything." I don't know what she's talking about. He went, he sat down in his chair, picked up his book and started reading. My mother looked at me in that way mothers look at children when they just told a tall tale. And she went back to what she was doing, and it was never spoken of in my family again. And to this day, if you ask that particular family member of mine, "Have you ever seen a UFO?" he was deny it. So McGrath has a lot of regional anomalies that are very interesting. I didn't appreciate it enough when I went out there to do some deep investigative research. So there is an area outside of McGrath that Oda-Lopez, and this is when I was a kid, so it was many years ago, and a lot of these people are no longer with us, unfortunately. Another missed opportunity for interviews. But they call this the land of no activity. Planes have magnetic issues when flying overhead, and many anomalies are seen, like circles and orbs, and like that. So nothing grows in this patch. It's just weird. It looks like it would be good land, but nothing grows there. So they talked about it privately, like it wasn't openly discussed. And many believed it was connected to the Black Pyramid, which is said to be up near Denali, the mountain known federally as Mount Pyramid. So there's still so much more to know and discover. The government is coming out with some more stuff, and we hope that their first dump was just the start, just the first start of what's coming out of the spigot, and we'll have some more good stuff to dig into and maybe confirmation of things that we know that we've always suspected and would like to scientifically prove. So there's never a better time to get involved with MUFON. And if anyone is interested in becoming a field investigator or learning more about it, you can talk to me. And also, if you just want to support the mission, you can become a member of MUFON at MUFON.com. And that would be a big help to support our national international mission. And so, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff for the next segment, which ties in very nicely. And you are really going to enjoy it. It's very interesting.